Let's talk about Aaron Pierre, who's the lead of this film that we're talking about today. I want to put this on record. Obviously we're going to talk about him in this movie that we're reviewing today, but I want this to be on camera, and I want to revisit this in about 3 to 4 years, or maybe less. But I feel as though if Aaron continues on this path, if his agents pick out good roles, if he picks out good roles that suits him and speaks to his sensibilities as an actor and challenges him as an actor, I think he can end up being, but when it's all said and done, he might be this generation's Denzel Washington, who, by the way, is my favorite actor of all time. And I really mean that. That's how much talent I think Aaron has as an actor. Now, what does that mean for the movie we're talking about today? Is he good in this film? Is the movie even good? Is it worth checking out on Netflix? Well, we'll discuss that and much more in today's spoiler-free review of Rebel Ridge. But first, let's get the conversation going in the comments below. Let me know if this is a film you all were excited to check out based on that awesome trailer that came out last month. But more importantly, once you've seen the film, let's talk about the pros, the cons, and everything in between. Let's have some great conversations in the comments below. When a former Marine confronts corruption in a small town after the local law enforcement unjustly seizes a bag of cash he needs to post his cousin's bail, he seeks his own vengeance and justice and uncovers a secret conspiracy. Now, this is brought to us by Jeremy Saulnier, who wrote and directed this movie and also directed one of my favorite films of 2015, which was A24's Green Room. Now, similar to Green Room, I feel Jeremy is such a great director and knows how to craft and build on creating edge of your seat, eyes glued to the screen tension. Now, Jeremy establishes suspense very early on in this film to the point that the tension's built up, that I want to jump through the screen. I want to get into action because of all the uneasiness that takes place within the opening scene in this film. Now, with Jeremy also being the writer of this film, the way he handles the story and the way it unravels itself and the way things escalate was something I just wasn't expecting. He's able to unravel the slow boiled tension within certain scenes in this film. For example, I can't stress enough how incredible the opening scene is. It had me completely locked in, and immediately I felt for our main character by the name of Terry, and it makes you immediately want him to get his justice for the situation he finds himself in the opening sequence. Again, Jeremy is the screenwriter of this film, and I think this is just kind of screenwriting 101, but you have to make your audience feel, care, and even sympathize with your protagonist, and I think he did a great job of doing that. And on the opposite end, when it comes to the antagonists, I hated them. I really disliked them, and again, this is all within minutes of this film that I'm already just engaged with what was going on screen. I also really appreciate the time Jeremy spent on setting up the situation with our lead and the way it handles the exposition in this movie. You're right there with our lead character in this film very early on as he's explaining why he's in a small town, what he's doing here, and as he's learning things, we're also learning things right there with him, and the way it's done, it makes you feel like you're participating with the movie versus finding it to be disattached or being bored by the information given to you early on. The pacing in the first half is so good in this movie. Just the vibe of the film to me kind of felt like a neo-western meets a Tom Clancy or even a Lee Child's Reacher type of approach. This movie can be extremely gripping and pulls you right into the film and thrusts you into the situation without warning, just like our character, and I love that element about this film. So if I were to pitch you all this movie, think of characters like Jack Ryan or Reacher meets John Rambo from Rambo First Blood. Now, with that being said, this film isn't all bang bang shoot 'em up action 24/7, but like I said earlier, think of it like a Western. You have this mysterious character who comes to the small town that has corruption going on. This mysterious individual has a past and has a particular set of skills, and more importantly, he's on a mission of his own and people are in his way. Now, when you have these type of movies that are like kind of isolated, smaller town situations, you need these type of characters that are engaging, characters you want to invest in, and I thought for the most part this movie had that. For example, you have supporting characters like Summers, who plays a bigger part in this movie in the second half of the film, who we'll discuss a little bit later, or someone like Jess. I thought all the supporting characters really fit well within this narrative. And then you have your main characters. For example, you have the chief of police, played by Don Johnson, who, by the way, perfect casting, having Don playing the opposite characters that we've seen him play before, like Nash Bridges or James Sonny Crockett. He's great in this film. His back and forth with the lead character and the other police officers were fantastic at getting under your skin in this movie. But now spotlighting the lead of this film, talking about Aaron Pierre, who plays plays a character by the name of Terry, who, like I said up top, is an ex-Marine who's trying to get his cousin out of prison in a small town. And listen, man, I think he is just such a great actor. I'm betting the house on him. Like I said up top, I think he's going to be the next Denzel. Him and Calvin Harrison Jr. are two people that I think will be leading Hollywood for the next 15, 20 years. But speaking to Aaron's performance in this movie, he is sensational. He commands the screen in this movie. He definitely is giving Denzel vibes. Like, I thought he really did a good job of kind of playing a Denzel archetype from what we've seen in the Equalizer movies, and not only just being believable in the action sequences, which again, he's an ex-Marine, he can handle his own, but he has the charm, he has the charisma, he has a sense of humor in his character that I did not expect, and I really enjoyed that element of the character. And it just all comes together to be this super dope ass character who's just this one man agent of chaos wrecking machine. Now, for you all that do not know, John Boyega was supposed to star in this movie, but he had to leave the project and they found Aaron to replace him. And listen, I love John Boyega, but I think Aaron's the perfect person for this role. Like, I think that there's no one else that could have played this role better than him as far as like the narrative and how it fits the story, but more importantly, the man is built like a tank, and he looks like Reacher. And I just think Aaron was just perfect for this role. And lastly, without giving too much away from the movie as far as the narrative goes, but I like how the film incorporates the social commentary on this story's police department, because as the film displays, you have this black guy who is trying to get his black cousin out of prison. You have these backwood, police officers who are messing with them. Now, stepping away from the movie and just thinking about the Hollywood landscape, sometimes when you have a black lead and a white director and primarily white actors, the authenticity isn't always the best, or the flow of the film kind of feels unrealistic at times. But I like how the film handles the race in this movie. Now, it's not, a racially driven narrative. Like, they do address it. This is a black man in this country area, and the white police officers are messing with them. But again, it isn't the driving force of this narrative. It is handled in a way that I appreciate it, and it doesn't beat you over the head with a message or handles it in a way that it feels unauthentic, and it's not like overly political in its statement. So I liked how they handled the social commentary with the police in this particular narrative. Now, one more thing I want to mention, this isn't a pro or a con, it's more of a warning, because I mentioned earlier, and if you've seen the trailers, the trailer kind of really pushes the action of this film. And I had said earlier, it has shades of Jack Ryan, Reacher, or even, John Rambo, First Blood. And it has those moments, and it has action. But the action, I don't want you all going into this thinking that this is like an action-heavy Equalizer movie. Like, the action's in the movie, but it's much later in the movie. And when the action does appear, I enjoyed it because I like the slow burn. I like how it builds to the tension and gets to those moments, but it takes a while. And when the action does hit the screen, it feels real. It was satisfying. It also felt grounded to the situation, and it was pretty badass. I really enjoyed the action. There's not a lot of gore in the action, especially coming from Jeremy, who did Green Room, that is a very brutal film. It doesn't have the same brutality. And the film, when I was watching, I'm like, why isn't he doing certain things in action? But then when you think about it, like, these are police officers, so you can only go so far without, going completely off the rails. So the action, while there's not a lot of it, I personally appreciate it. So again, I just want y'all to know that this isn't John Wick. It's a Western in that sense of the pacing of it all. But with that being said, those are my main pros. Transitioning into my criticisms here. Now, this works great as a story of a skilled ex-Marine who's trying to get his cousin out of jail, and he happens to stumble upon this small town and discovers some corruption. And the first act is clicking on all cylinders. I love the first act of this film. But unfortunately, the movie peaked at about 45 minutes into this 2-hour and 10-minute runtime for me. Now, with that being said, I'm not saying the second half of this film or the third act is like trash and it ruins the film. But for me, the movie loses momentum because it shifts our character's main objective and puts it in the background in order to focus on this mystery within the town. And that element to me wasn't nearly as compelling or as engaging as the initial setup. The second half of this film focuses on a character by the name of Summer, who's played by AnnaSophia Robb, who, by the way, did a really good job in the role, but that particular story with her and her kid and the backstory didn't really hold up to me, especially when you look at what's going on with Terry and his cousin. Again, it all ties together within the story that's given here, but the way the story handles the cousin and it shifts Terry's perspective and his goal just wasn't executed properly to me. Again, I can't stress enough, the setup in this film is phenomenal. Like, again, I was locked into this movie, but my issue with this movie is the second half, when we shift the perspective, when we shift gears, and it becomes kind of more of a conventional thriller mystery. It kind of becomes predictable. You kind of know where things are headed, and I just feel like you've seen this movie before, and when we get into the conspiracy thriller, it just felt like it was all over the place to me, and it just wasn't as engaging as the first half. And lastly, I think this movie is about 20 minutes too long, and if I'm being honest, I thought the ending was weak to me. It does one of those things where you lead up to this moment and you uncover the mystery and the conspiracy, but then you don't see the shakeout. You don't see the ramifications and the consequences. It just kind of ends in a way that's just like, we couldn't get like at least 5 more, even though it was longer, even though it was too long to me. You could have gave us at least 5 more minutes to kind of show the ramifications of what was discovered. So I wasn't the biggest fan of how the film ended. So how does that affect my score? Is it something I'm recommending? Before we get to that, I want to take the time to thank you all for making it to this point in the video. If you enjoyed yourself so far, make sure to do me a favor, hit the like button. Also, consider sharing this video to anyone and everyone you know that might be interested in this film. And if you enjoyed yourself, consider sticking around by subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell. That way you can stay up to date with all my daily content. With all that being said, overall, I thought director and writer Jeremy Saulnier did his own version of a neo-western meets Reacher and Rambo for his blood. Rebel Ridge's first act is incredibly enthralling and sets up the tension perfectly. This to me felt like a quintessential throwback to your parents' favorite 80s or 90s films with a nice modern feel. I thought Don Johnson was fantastic, and Aaron Pierre continues to prove that he is one of the best and brightest stars working in Hollywood and delivers a stellar performance. And again, I liken it to a Denzel Washington performance within the Equalizer franchise. Now, the film does peak after the halfway point by shifting into a more conventional mystery, but there's no denying how much it had me hooked from the opening scene, and I definitely recommend you all give this a watch. With all that being said, I'm going to give Rebel Ridge a 3.5 out of 5. Man, again, if this film just could have kept a particular character in the narrative longer to really hit on the emotional beats and really kind of rev the story up and also blend the stories together better, this movie would have had a higher score for me. But with all that being said, great performances, really great direction, phenomenal tension, incredible first half of this film. And again, Aaron Pierre, you're that guy. And I expect some Academy Awards in your future because you are great. So I think it's worth checking out. And if you guys do check out this film, which will be available on Netflix, let's talk about it in the comments below. Pros, cons, thoughts on direction, the story. How did you feel about the shifting of the story and how things played out? Let's talk about it. And also, if you've seen Aaron's career, or if this is your first time seeing one of his movies, what do you all think? Am I sipping on something crazy? Is he the next generation Denzel? Do you all see the potential? Let's talk about it all in the comments below. Thank you all again for watching today's review. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. You all are awesome. Stay safe, and I'll catch you all on the next video.